What's up, Taiwan? I'm Reece with news from here in Taiwan and around the world. Here in Taipei, the country's legislature has descended into chaos as lawmakers bicker over controversial reforms. The disagreements have been so bad that at one stage the arguments turned into physical blows. Rick Glowett has been watching the drama unfold and joins us live from the capital. Rick, what is this all about?
So, big political drama in Taiwan's legislature today. We've seen pushing, shoving, people climbing over desks and chairs. We've even seen one female lawmaker tackled to the ground. You've got to remember that Taiwan's parliament is split. The ruling party, the Democratic Progressive Party, does not have a majority there. In fact, two main opposition parties work together against it. So today they're fighting about major political reforms on how lawmakers and the president work together. The opposition parties want more accountability for the presidential office. They want the right to call the president into the legislature and ask them questions. Now, the theatrics we've seen today are not actually uncommon in Taiwan. Lawmakers here are almost expected to make a show of their passions and how much they care about issues for the people that voted for them. And today these bills are expected to pass, but they come just days before Taiwan's new president takes office. It's a show of force and a rallying call from those that politically oppose him.
And as you just mentioned, we are now just 3 days away from the inauguration of Lai Ching-te, who will have to work without a majority in the legislature. So based on what we've seen today, how does this fare for Lai's presidency?
So when Lai Ching-te picks up the keys to the presidential office on Monday, he's taking over a very different political situation from his predecessor. His party is already warning that the opposition parties will be blindly blocking his spending bills to cripple his leadership. The main opposition party, the Kuomintang or the KMT, has said that they won't be doing that. They will be following due process. But Lai will be needing that crucial cross-party support if he's to make good on his big plans for his leadership, particularly defense spending. He's promised to stand up to China, and that includes spending more money on weapons from the US and developing Taiwan's domestic weapons production industry, particularly submarines. So a new president with his work cut out to tackle this hostile legislature, particularly if these bills pass and he's called in to speak to them.
That was reporter Rick Glowett telling us about events inside Taiwan's legislature this morning. Taipei's Mayor Jiang Wan-an is in Tokyo sharing his city's disaster preparedness experience with mayors from around the world. Jiang delivered a speech about Taipei's experience with urban renovation and last month's magnitude 7.2 earthquake. He addressed mayors from cities in over 40 countries. Taiwan and Japan often work together on disaster rescue and relief and other issues that face both countries.
一起讨论我们所共同面临的问题跟挑战，极端气候、地震的来临，以及少子女化。
The Chinese military is showing off new robot war dogs at its biggest ever joint drills with Cambodia. The two countries began their annual 2-week-long Golden Dragon ground and sea drills in Cambodia on Thursday. Cambodia's military thanked Beijing for providing new weapons and helping upgrade military facilities there. The United States has expressed concern over China's involvement in the expansion of Cambodia's Reem naval base, saying it could become a new outpost for China's navy in the region. A new era. That's how Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin are describing their partnership. The two sides have been meeting in China and have issued a joint statement pledging to deepen ties. They've also sent a blunt message to the US. Rosie Greninger reports.
The red carpet rolled out in Beijing as Russian President Vladimir Putin meets with his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping on a 2-day state visit. After a summit on the first day of the trip, the leaders signed a joint declaration pledging to deeper strategic defense and military ties and work together to improve security in the Asia-Pacific region, while condemning what they cast as increasingly aggressive US behaviour. As the two countries mark 75 years of diplomatic relations, the talks were described as warm and comradely, as the leaders praised the relationship between the two countries as stabilizing.
Отношения России и Китая не являются конъюнктурными и не направлены против кого бы то ни было. Наше сотрудничество в мировых делах сегодня выступает одним из главных стабилизирующих факторов на международной арене.
Trade was an important aspect of the summit, as sanctions squeezed Russia after its invasion of Ukraine, while China's territorial claims and military growth leave it facing trade barriers. The two leaders agreed to strengthen ties in nuclear and energy cooperation, food supplies, and Chinese car manufacturing. Despite Western pressure on Beijing to help end the conflict in Ukraine and cut support for Russia that could fund the war, China has maintained its neutrality. Putin thanks Xi for efforts to resolve the war, while Xi said both sides agree there needs to be a political solution.
中方期待欧洲大陆早日恢复和平稳定，愿继续为此发挥建设性作用。
This is despite China's increased economic and moral support since the war started more than 2 years ago, just after Moscow and Beijing announced their so-called no-limits partnership. Now, this meeting on Putin's first foreign trip since winning a fifth term in office shows the ties between the two nations are as strong as ever.
那普京总统能来中国的话，这是他连任之后的第一次出访中国，所以这是一个很重要的节点。中俄关系是非常坚挺的，就是友谊然后当然刚才还讲到，就是我们两个国家都是有大家互相能够帮助到各自的这种需求点。
The two leaders are also visiting Harbin in northeastern China, a city with strong ties to Russia. This visit marks the 43rd time these two presidents have met, underlying the importance of the relationship between the two countries and the leaders' plans to continue forging even closer ties. Scott Huang and Rosie Greninger for TaiwanPlus.
The sister of North Korean leader Kim Jong-un is denying reports the country is supplying weapons to Russia. This is what state media reported Kim Yo Jong as saying, quote, "As we have already stated several times, the rumor about arms dealing between North Korea and Russia, woven with prejudice and fiction, is the most absurd theory, which is not worth making any evaluation or interpretation." Kim Yo Jong also said North Korea's weapons program is for defense against South Korea, not for export. The accusations of weapons transfers to Russia come from the US and South Korea. In April, a UN report said that missile debris found in Ukraine had been from North Korean weapons. President Tsai Ing-wen is stepping down in just a few days, and her party's signature energy policy could be in jeopardy. As part of our coverage wrapping up the end of Tsai's presidency, Sally Jensen brings us this report.
Simulating a nuclear disaster. With the change in Taiwan's leadership imminent, protesters in the capital Taipei fear a reversal to the government's planned abolition of nuclear energy.
我们觉得很不幸的就是蔡英文即将卸任，那现在就由这个赖清德总统执政之后呢，立法院里面国民党也占了多数，所以也许永和的这个势力又会从头来过。
President Tsai Ing-wen's successor is her vice president Lai Ching-te. But while their Democratic Progressive Party, or DPP, won the presidency for a third term in January elections, the opposition Kuomintang, or KMT, won a slight majority of legislative seats and now hopes to undo the DPP's nuclear energy phase-out. The DPP has its roots in the anti-nuclear movement, and since the party's founding in 1986, it has worked towards phasing out nuclear energy. Back then, nuclear power made up over 40% of Taiwan's energy mix. When President Tsai Ing-wen took office 30 years later, it was at 12%. Now it's at 6%.
And that all comes from here, Taiwan's last running nuclear power plant. Under the DPP's no nuclear homeland policy launched in 2017, President Tsai has overseen the shutdown of 2 others, leaving just this one, which is also set to close by next year.
Tsai has had to balance meeting a global commitment to net zero emissions with skyrocketing industrial demand for energy domestically, especially from power-intensive semiconductor manufacturing. More than 90% of the world's most advanced chips are made here. Since the start of Tsai's 8 years in office, Taiwan's share of renewable energy, like solar and wind, has doubled, from 5% to almost 10%, still a long way from the 2025 target of 20%. But the breakneck speed of this energy transition has led to disputes over land with local communities and greater reliance on imported methane gas, which, like coal, is vulnerable to supply disruptions and emits more potent greenhouse gases.
对，但是它毕竟还是火力发电，那还是会造成不少的排放。对，那所以其实终极的目标还是希望说，再生能源的比例可以大幅的提高。
A growing number of nuclear energy advocates say that to avoid an energy crisis, Taiwan must rethink its most controversial power source.
I support the idea of developing renewable energy, but you have to keep the base load. And the base load must be nuclear, because if we are talking about green, then nuclear is the solution. And this green energy is actually recognized by most countries in the world.
Despite her administration's push towards phasing out nuclear energy, Tsai leaves office with public opinion on the matter still divided. And there are external factors also at play, like military threats from neighboring China, which claims sovereignty over Taiwan.
Nuclear energy is one of these issues that's long contested in Taiwanese politics, and that is true before Tsai's term, and it will be true after. But I think what's interesting, too, is that under Tsai, we do see rising threats from China. And so it has come up a few times, for example, that nuclear could potentially be useful in the event of a Chinese invasion because of the fact that there would be needs for energy.
Under Tsai, Taiwan's energy program has seen a change in winds. She has expanded renewables and faithfully continued the DPP's no-nuclear homeland policy. But with growing calls for a rethink, her no-nuke supporters may see their worst fears come to light when she passes on the torch. Chris Ma and Sally Ensign for TaiwanPlus.
Tune in this evening to TaiwanPlus as we bring you our final report on Tsai's presidency ahead of Inauguration Day on May 20th. Public support for LGBTQ+ issues continues to rise 5 years after Taiwan made history by legalizing same-sex marriage. But I went to meet advocates who say that conservative social values are still impacting how queer people are viewed.
同婚支持创新高，同婚支持创新高，友善政策要更好，友善政策要更好。
Taiwan is marking 5 years since its groundbreaking decision to legalize same-sex marriage, making it the first country in Asia to do so. And here in Taipei, advocacy group Taiwan Equality Campaign is announcing the results of a recent survey that shows overall increasing public support for LGBTQ+ issues. Support for same-sex marriage has increased from around 42% in 2020 to over 56% this year. The poll also surveyed the public on their attitudes towards queer people around them, including colleagues, teachers and family members, with some stagnating results, showing people tend to have more conservative views when the issue is closer to home.
In terms of the social friendliness, we see the number kindly have rise a little bit, but stopped for the past 3 years. So we're quite looking forward for another anti-discrimination law or more things done by the government and the civil society to promote our society become more and more friendly.
Taiwan is considered a haven in Asia for LGBTQ+ people, but some issues, such as gay men donating blood and IVF treatment for single women or lesbian couples, still need addressing. But rights groups here are confident that incoming President Lai Ching-te's administration, which is set to take office on May 20th, will continue the groundwork set by his predecessor. Reece and Tsai in Taipei for TaiwanPlus. Thank you for watching What's Up Taiwan. I'm Reece. Take care and we'll see you next time.